Okay guys, so I'm out here in my garage and I'm working on my 330s today. It's what is it, March the 13th or 14th I think today. So as you can see here, this is a Belle 330 and as you can see there is no trigger. The trigger wires are gone off of it. So this happens fairly often. I catch quite a few beavers in a year, so my traps are always firing. And you know, bending them in that, and the wires end up, you know, eventually breaking off. You can see the wires broke off in there. So anyway, I'm going to, I mean, most of you guys probably know how, but anyway, I'm just going to show you how you can change out the trigger wire. So you need a 3/8 spanner to take that nut off, and I'm going to set this trap, close the springs up, put the safeties on, a little bit easier to work. And then what I got is what I replaced the trigger wire with is this number 12 black annealed wire. Works good. It's bendable, and that's what I use to replace it. That's what I like about these 330 Belials. You can easily change out the dogs compared to, here's a Duke 330 and they're riveted. So once that wire breaks, you'd have to take a grinder, grind off the rivets, put a new wire on, and rivet it back on. A little more of a pain. Just one more reason why I don't like the Duke 330s. I mean, I know they're a good trap for the price, but if you can afford it, I would definitely I go with the Belle. The other thing is with the Belle, the safeties, they stay where you put them. Whereas, like with the Victor, the Belle, or the Dukes, when you're trying to set the spring, you know, they're sliding down to the far end, and I don't know, just more of a pain. And the other is when they close, when a Duke closes, it's, you know, it closes tight, but the way the frames are made, you know, there's some play there. Whereas, you know, you got your Duke or your 330 Belle, and the way the trap jaws are bent, you know, they come together so close and nice and tight. And I'll tell you, I've caught a lot of beaver by the tail, front foot, back foot. I've even caught them by the, you know, by the side. And those beavers are always still there in the trap, you know, when I get there. Doesn't matter if they're hanging on by a toenail. Whereas with the Dukes, you know, if you don't get that beaver in there perfect, which, I mean, I know you hope to every time, but sometimes they swim sideways to the trap or whatever and kick out a foot. And anyway, I know you guys have heard lots about, you know, what trap to get and blah blah blah, so I'm not going to go on to that too much. The other thing I'm going to show you is how when I get my 330s, what I do with them. I put on a chunk of the 3/32 snare cable, and about, I'd say 2 to 3 feet long, and then with a loop on the end so that I can tie it off. Anyway, so I'm going to get this trap set, and then I'll show you from there. Okay, so got my trap set here. I got the, well, not set, but I got the springs closed. So you just take your 3/8 spanner, and you just need the one wrench because the other side, it's sort of like a carriage bolt, so the other side doesn't spin. Make sure you don't lose that nut. So there's the bolt. So you just set that aside. And then what I do is just sort of open that up and try and get that chunk of wire out of there. So there's what's in the actual trigger itself. So all I do is I take my number 12 black annealed wire, I cut about 1 foot, and then all I do is I pick out roughly the center, and I just want to trap or bend that wire so that it's roughly the same size. So now you can see it's about the same size as the old one. So now I can get rid of that old piece. Then all you do is you take that, you slide it up inside, grab your bolt and your nut, make sure that's sitting in there good. And all you got to do is tighten her down. And so now that's in there like super solid. Now what I do is I don't like having long springs because I don't set my triggers like that. So what I do is I actually like to come down maybe about an inch, inch and a half, and then I bend and I bend so that it looks like that. Then I take my cutters and I cut off the excess. That's all I have for a trigger. Now you might be thinking, well, you might be missing muskrat, otter, whatever. But I never, well, I hardly ever set my triggers on top. 9 times out of 10, I set my triggers on the bottom. Make sure. See, and this is what I like about these on the Belle Isle 330s. See that? That stays right there. If this was a Duke or a Victor, it'd be slipping down. You'd have to get it up, slide it out to the end, make sure, you know. These, they stay right where you put them. I love these traps. I always set it on the finest setting. Today I'm going to set it on the solider one. And then that's how I set my traps. Just like that. With the dog on the bottom. There's nothing that's going to be able to get over that trigger without getting caught. 9 times out of 10, I'm setting my traps at a caster mount set, and I've got my 330 just set out in the water, you know, where it's maybe about 1/4 to 1/3 underwater, so you don't even see that trigger. And I get great catches right behind the head. You know, not very often are they way in the trap or anything like that. Anyway, guys, I mean, that's just my personal preference. Anyway, then I'm going to show you how I attach my cable. Okay, so I fixed my trigger. Now I'm going to replace my tie-off cable. So all I do is I take my cutters, I remove the old piece of cable, because what happens is they start getting all rusted, and when the beavers are twisting in that, they start getting frayed, and eventually they'll bust. So then I take my cable, I take a double furl. Again, this is the same size of cable as I use for my coyote and wolf snares. Put a double furl on, run it through the trap spring, run it back through my double furl, cinch it up, crimp it, then double furl on the other end. All I do, leave about 1/4 of an inch sticking out, pull it tight, and that's the loop that I would take, and I would take my number 12 wire, put it through there and wire it off to whatever I need to. Whether I stick a beaver stick in the ground, wire it off to that, or a nearby tree. Anyway, all this does is gives a little more protection closer to the trap, so that if you make a bad catch, you know, they're biting on this cable and not just wire. This wire can bend a lot more times than just regular cable. So that's why I add this 3-foot piece of cable on to the trap, so that you know, it takes the wear and tear, not my tie-off wire. Anyway, guys, that's what I do for my 330s. I know we've been talking a little bit lately about dyeing traps. You know, some people spray paint, some people dye. There's all different types of dyes out there. You know, and it's really up to the individual as to you know, what they want to use. For their dye. I use speed dip. I usually go with the black or the brown. It doesn't really matter, but I usually use the black. I don't dip my wire or my cable in it. I just dip my 330s, and I also do dip my footholds. Now, with that being said, I don't dip them every year. I don't find that there's a need to dip them every year. This stuff, you know, when you first buy your traps, what I do is, you know, I let them rust. Not like big time, but it gets that grease off of them. Throw them outside on the lawn there for a week or whatever. Let the rain hit them, sun, everything. Cleans them up well, and then dye them. That first dye might only last you a year, but after that, when you dye your traps, you know, I only dye mine every 2 or 3 years. 2 years is even, I would say it's not even 3 years, or it's 3 years to 4 years actually probably that I dye my traps. And 1 quart does me. I make it last. I'm cheap. And what I do is, you know, I get a tote. I mix it up with my gas. That's what speed dip you mix it with. And, you know, I slosh it around and I get that dye on those traps. And I dye about 3 dozen 330s, a dozen 220s, and then probably about 2 dozen 110s and 120s, and then probably 3 or 4 dozen number 1 long springs. And then I think about a dozen footholds for canines. Anyway, so I mean, yeah, 1 quart does it. Does all my traps, and then I let them hang up and I let them dry for a while, for a few days. Let that dye get on there good and solid, and then I just use them. My canine traps, that's a whole different issue. I do boil them in cedar and that. But anyway. So yeah, guys, I know it's a little bit of a long video, but anyway, just thought I'd show you. Bit of a rainy day out, so. Alright guys, thanks for watching.